During an attack, a soldier reports that 323 men from his unit have been killed by the enemy, and as a result, he is the last survivor. As he reports back, the enemy attacks the base too and he is destroyed shortly after. At the base, a group of eccentric mercenaries are on a killing spree. Although their controller, called Tao, notes that the target isn't in the base, he quickly locates the scientist who is about to escape. He sends the coordinates to their shooter called Takio, who then lands in the area and single-handedly secures the target. At the base, Captain Krantz reveals that their next mission is in Japan. In Japan, two friends called Toshiro and Manabu arrive at school to find everyone fussing about an incredibly handsome security guard. When they approach him, he inquires about his injury and is told it was from a car accident. But upstairs, it is revealed that Toshiro's memory was in fact altered. Frankenstein recalls how he recruited M21, a superhuman experiment who defied the Union, to work as a security guard. Later, we are introduced to our main protagonist, called Razel, who charms everyone with his looks when he arrives in class. He then decides to doodle on Toshiro's cast. During lunch, a fancy car drives into the school compound and out of it emerge a group of thugs who begin harassing students in search of Toshiro. As an old security guard begs the leader to leave, he breaks his broom and is about to punch him, but Toshiro protects him despite being injured himself. The leader then reveals that he is outraged because Toshiro hit on his girlfriend. However, in actuality, he was just trying to be a gentleman. Toshiro tries to resolve the matter peacefully, but the other thugs want violence. Toshiro is then attacked, but he manages to evade for a while until he is sent flying. M21 hesitates to interfere, and in turn Razel gives him a disappointed look. The fight between Toshiro and the gang leader continues until he breaks his cast. The old man selflessly intervenes again, so he is grabbed, but at that moment, M21 steps in, demanding he let go of him. The leader then tries to attack M21, but he is put in his place after he got a taste of his overwhelming strength, so he and his group run away. At night, the Union mercenaries arrive in Japan to investigate a missing coffin. The following day, just as M21 is about to close the gate, two individuals arrive dressed as students. They hypnotize M21, so he obliges and shows them to Frankenstein, the director. In the office, they also use their abilities to demand the director to accept them as transfer students. Although it is revealed that he is immune to their mind control, he plays along anyway. The students are later introduced as Regis Landegger and Sarah Loyard, and the teacher then puts them in Toshiro's care. As they lock eyes with Razel, his aura frightens them, but they hide it. During lunch, the new students join Toshiro and his friends. As they eat together, Manabu seems to have fallen for Sarah's charms. Later, M21 asks why Frankenstein enrolled the pair in Razel's class, so he tells him it's so they can find out what it is they want. M21 asks what they are, to which Frankenstein explains that they are nobles, powerful beings that transcend science. Long ago, when humans discovered them, they came to rely on their godly powers in emergencies. However, these said nobles are compelled to help humans since they are actually the weaker species. At home, they find out that Razel let the students into the director's house, and despite being outraged, Frankenstein still has to obey his master. Toshiro then suggests that Regis and Sarah also crash at the house since they have no place to stay, and Razel agrees. Back at school, Regis confronts M21 as he thinks works for the Union. Regis reveals that he wants information regarding the whereabouts of the coffin where the nobles was. But seeing as he isn't ready to cooperate, Regis attacks, but M21 can put up a fight thanks to his modifications. However, as they proceed, Regis ends up defeating him swiftly. Their battle is then interrupted by Sarah, who asks for help since they're being harassed by a group of delinquents. As they are threatened, Toshiro gets ready to take on the entire gang by himself, and so he begins fighting them one after the other. Although he's outnumbered, Regis watches as he manages to put on a good show and save his friends. However, when they bring out guns, M21 intervenes and puts an end to the fight. At dinner, Regis starts bickering with M21 about how much food they got, still thinking the director is under his hypnosis since he plays along. He tries the hypnosis on Razel but isn't sure if it worked. In class, Toshiro discovers that Manabu likes Regis instead of Sarah since she tries to bonding with him. In Manabu's house, Toshiro distracts Regis while he helps his uncle set up cybersecurity. He then notices a hacker who he kicks out, but it turns out to be Tao the controller, an ex-member of DA5 like Takio who we will meet later. Tao switched allegiances, joining up with Razel and Frankenstein after finding out that the DA5 group was actually created for Krantz to absorb their powers. Tao then sends a virus so they begin their cyber war. However, just when Manabu is in a pinch, Toshiro trips the cable. When he logs back in, Tao has also stopped his attacks. When he goes out to report the incident, Toshiro begins replying to Tao's text thinking it's from a girl. Now curious, he asks the age and then is later shocked when he discovers he has been texting an older guy. At the base, Tao reveals that he has located M21, so Krantz orders Hammer and Shark to go and apprehend him. While walking home, M21 encounters Shark and Hammer, who asks him to come with them. Although he doesn't want to fight, after making a mockery of his dead partner called M24, he becomes enraged and attacks. However, his strikes are all evaded and he is beaten by Shark. He then takes on a defensive role, but eventually, Shark is too strong for him to handle. Just then, Regis and Sarah happen to stumble upon the encounter. M21 asks them not to interfere, but Regis, being arrogant, begins insulting the pair, stating that Shark's hair is like seaweed and M21's gut is disgusting. This provokes Shark to attack, but M21 defends him. As things get out of hand, Krantz arrives at the scene to calm things down. Regis tries to butt in again, but M21 won't have it. Regis then agrees to cooperate with them so that they don't discover that him and Sarah are nobles. However, Sarah had no idea of this and thinks he betrayed them. Meanwhile, Manabu and Tao seem to be enjoying themselves as they battle each other online, so Tao thinks maybe he should pay him a visit. On the other hand, Sarah explains to Frankenstein that M21 went with some men who he seemed to be working for. We then see the group then begin interrogating him. As they proceed, M21 concludes that they are unaware that he has already betrayed the Union. He decides to cooperate with the condition that they do something for him. They then threaten to use a truth serum on him. However, he isn't fazed by this one bit. He requests that they help him pull information on his fellow test subject, knowing for certain that Tao is capable of delivering, and so they strike a deal. At school, the group notices that M21 has been missing for some days, and also, Regis hasn't been his usual self, so Toshiro suggests that they all hang out together and go shopping. However, Manabu suddenly gets an invite from Tao, leaving just Toshiro and Sarah to do the shopping. While walking, they see a guy being harassed, so as usual, Toshiro butts in to save the day. The guy introduces himself as Takio and thanks them, saying that they look like couples. However, they tell him that they aren't. Meanwhile, Manabu and Tao meet up and compliment each other's hacking skills while also discovering that they have so much in common. Manabu also decides give Tao's boss a call since she has come to respect his superb skills. At their base, M21 still isn't saying a word, so Shark begins losing his patience and threatens to end him. When Takio tells him to be gentle, Shark belittles him for being too soft and sparing people during missions. However, Shark makes sure to kill everyone he spares. He also adds that Takio's sister, who is being held hostage by the Union, is probably dead already, which makes Takio mad. However, Tao stops them from fighting. As Regis and the gang head home, he notices they are being spied on, so instead he goes to confront the spies, who turn out to be Shark and Hammer. As Shark attacks, he quickly realizes that Regis isn't any ordinary child. He continues attacking, but Regis freezes time and wounds him badly. Shark then realizes he must be a noble. Regis dashes at him, but Hammer intervenes, telling Shark to take the fight seriously, giving him a pill which when taken gives him a stronger form. He becomes so fast that Regis can barely keep up with his moves. Also, Regis's mind control isn't working anymore and Shark begins boasting. However, Regis becomes super serious and in an instant he brings Shark close to death's door, but is forced to stop when he discovers Toshiro and Manabu have been captured. Back at the base, Shark reveals to the rest of the group, along with M21, to the new captives. Later, Sarah informs the director she has a telepathic link with Regis and she can feel that he is in trouble, so she goes to his aid. At the base, they try to link Regis with M21, but he denies being acquainted with him in any way. After waking up, Toshiro begins making a fuss, but when Shark tries to make him behave, Takio stands up for him. Manabu also notices that Tao is part of the gang, so he asks what is happening, and they then pin everything on M21, making him feel like the villain. Meanwhile, as Sarah searches for Regis, Frankenstein and Razel follow behind. Shark begins beating up Toshiro in hopes that M21 would reveal the information he is hoarding, but he doesn't budge. As Shark continues his assault, Regis steps in, so Shark focuses on tormenting him instead. Outside, Hammer encounters Sarah. As soon as they lock eyes, he becomes wary and throws bombs at her. Seeing as it has next to no effect, he quickly sets his explosives and escapes from the scene. As Toshiro punches Shark, the situation becomes even more intense. Krantz then gives permission for Shark to terminate them, but still, M21 holds himself from interfering since it would spoil his selfish plans. As Regis is watching, M21 finally makes his decision, attacking Shark. Outside, Frankenstein and Razel arrive at the base but are welcomed by Takio. Frankenstein then confronts him while telling Razel to go ahead. Thus, the battle commences with each party showing tremendous ability. Upon seeing his capability, Frankenstein commends Takio's skills despite being a human. Meanwhile, M21 and Shark continue to battle each other inside. Shark powers up and blasts a tornado at M21. He ups the intensity of his attacks and M21 is barely able to keep up. Although M21 soon reaches his limit, he doesn't give up, and after seeing his sheer determination, Regis intervenes and sends Shark flying. Meanwhile, on the roof the battle is in a stalemate, so Takio takes his pill, which makes his abilities immediately skyrocket. Seeing Regis is serious, Shark transforms with his pill but is still tossed around by an angry Regis like it's nothing. Krantz then interrupts the fight, and as he takes his pill, Tao gets scared. After Krantz transforms, Shark is happy the tables have turned. However, he is stabbed and Krantz reveals that he is in fact absorbing his powers. Disgusted by their act, Regis moves to execute Krantz, but he is no match for his speed. Krantz puts him down with a single strike, but he quickly gets back up again. He then charges an energy blast at Krantz, but it doesn't affect him one bit. This time, Krantz finishes him off with a punch. We then discover that Takio has Frankenstein at gunpoint as he doesn't want to unleash his powers. However, when Takio mentions he will kill Razel next, he loses his cool. When Razel arrives underground, Krantz tries speaking to him, but with one word from his mouth, Razel forces Krantz to bow down along with everyone else. Meanwhile, Hammer engages Sarah with his cannon, but she simply slices it with her bare hands. She then conjures a soul weapon, called Death Scythe, and with that it takes a single strike to defeat him. On the roof, Frankenstein reveals that he has disobeyed his master's orders by showing his powers. With this new power, he toys with Takio, who is no match for him. As Takio is about to be defeated, his life flashes before him and he sees his sister, which motivates him to show a commendable fighting spirit. Inside, Krantz manages to get up again, furiously dashing at Razel. However, he is stopped with an arm and sent flying. After seeing his attacks have no effect, he orders Tao to take the pill so he can absorb his power. Upon seeing that he is about to be killed, Manabu begs Razel to save him. At the same time, Frankenstein uses his shadow-like power to wrap up his battle with Takio. But just as he's about to finish him off, Sarah arrives at the scene. She notes that he has been pretending all along to be ordinary. When Takio sees her, he apologizes and asks that she saves Toshiro. Frankenstein then decides not to finish him off as they go inside. Meanwhile, Tao defies Krantz and takes the side of the enemy, making Krantz charge at him. As Krantz is about to absorb him, Razel makes him stop moving. He then tells Toshiro they need not plead to him since they are friends. Later, he begins controlling the blood in the atmosphere with a skill called Blood Field. With this skill, he manipulates a blood field and consumes Krantz into nothing. Later at home, Tao joins the group for dinner, and as they eat, M21 and Takio come out to join the meal as well. As Takio and Tao discuss how to leave the Union, Takio sounds worried since his sister is with them. Tao then reveals that he never had a sister and it was a fake memory implanted to keep him loyal to the organization. The following day, they reveal to Frankenstein that they want to leave. Tao informs M21 that he tried looking for the information he demanded, but it's all been destroyed. As they leave, he begs Frankenstein to let them stay and work for them, to which he agrees. A few weeks later, after recovering, Manabu and Toshiro are back in school. They discover that Takio and Tao have been employed as guards. When Tao waves at Manabu, the other students give him a cold stare. At home, they're met by a tense atmosphere. Frankenstein reveals they have decided it is best to erase Manabu and Toshiro's memories. Of course, Toshiro is against it, however they explain it is for their own safety. The next day, a mysterious man appears in the school and everyone is alerted. He is seen being hostile at the gate after noticing the guards are inhumans. And just then, Regis and Sarah appear to bow before him, addressing him as their clan leader. Frankenstein also arrives at the scene and addresses the man as Digital Landigger. Elsewhere, a group of clan leaders discuss how Regis and Sarah have encountered the one in the coffin but remain silent. As it turns out, Razel is an enemy of the new queen. Outside, two clan leaders called Karyas and Rajak reveal during their discussion that Razel is considered a traitor to their kind. Later, Razel meets with Digital, who informs him that so many things have changed since before he was put to sleep. After the previous lord's death, his daughter Raskrea took over as lord and is in search of Razel, who is responsible for her father's death. When Frankenstein shows him to his room, he reveals that he doesn't trust him since he was once a murderer who slaughtered nobles in Lucadonia. It is then revealed that in the past, Frankenstein used to capture nobles and carry out experiments on them. When Digital enters the palace at that time, he finds Razel and the Lord chatting. However, Razel leaves shortly after. Digital then informs the Lord about Frankenstein, the noble hunter who is killing their comrades by utilizing a great power despite being human. the Lord orders that they capture him alive. Afterward, Frankenstein is hunted down by an army of nobles and finally cornered on a cliff. However, when he is told to surrender, he unleashes his power, which he uses to instantly annihilate the army. Next, Jejudel and another clan elder, called Ragger, arrive at the scene. As they prepare to battle, Jejudel is asked to stand back since it would be a disgrace for two clan leaders to attack one man. As Frankenstein is struck first, he then flaunts his powers with attacks that are evaded. The intense battle continues until it looks like they are evenly matched. To gain the upper hand, Ragger summons his soul weapon to intimidate Frankenstein. But instead, he gets excited and summons a weapon called the Dark Sphere. A swing from this weapon levels the forest behind them, so they are astonished. Frankenstein reveals that he is angry at the nobles for looking down on humans, adding that he wants to punish the nobles who control humans indiscriminately with their powers. By this time, Frankenstein's powers begin consuming him, and in turn he starts losing himself. Upon seeing this, Jejudel then summons his soul weapon, and together they attack him before it is too late. However, he ends up escaping their attack and wanders into a mansion in the woods where he finds a lone noble. When the clan leaders catch up to him, Razel decides to defend him, stating Frankenstein is a worker at his mansion. Out of respect, the clan leaders leave to report to the Lord. 5 years later, Ragger and Frankenstein are seen sparring in Razel's mansion, and after they finish, they appear to be friends. The following day, Frankenstein finally acknowledges the invitation from the Lord and goes to visit him at his castle, where the Lord asks why he hasn't formed a contract with Razel, telling him he has his pride as a human. The Lord then reveals that the reason Razel isolates himself is because his role sometimes makes him kill his fellow nobles by acting to maintain order with the Lord. Some time passes and Frankenstein asks Jejudel to spar with him. However, he refuses. At that moment, some nobles who have a grudge against him arrive and offer to be his sparring partner. As they battle, they appear to have powers similar to each other, but the noble, called Urukai's, has a power far superior. After being pushed back, he summons his Dark Sphere. They continue their battle again, and as they fight, Urukai reveals he is angry because Razel has taken a liking to him. This angers him so much that he sends Frankenstein flying. As he rants about why a mere human shouldn't be allowed near Razel, Frankenstein loses control and goes berserk, severely injuring Urukai, who still wants to fight but is stopped by Jejudel and Ragger, who tells him he can't defeat Frankenstein in that form. As Frank rampages more, his attack is stopped by Razel and the Lord at the same time. Razel then goes in alone while Frankenstein attacks him. He uses his blood field technique to surround Frankenstein, thus calming his rage. Afterward, he forms a contract with him, and so he returns back to his human form. In the present, Jejudel decides to leave Japan with nothing after looking at his life. When he returns to Lucadonia, he reports that Razel has not been found and that the reports regarding Sarah and Regis are false. The queen doesn't believe him and orders he be put in prison while they bring Sarah, so she uses her mind-reading ability to confirm his report. But just then, a young noble called Rael appears offering to bring Sarah back, so the queen grants him permission to go ahead with the mission. The following day, Rael arrives at the school and immediately activates his mind control skill. When the guards confront him, he notices they are modified humans, so he stabs M21. He then goes to finish off the rest, but Regis and Sarah arrive in the nick of time. He is happy to see Sarah, who he once proposed to. As Regis interrupts, he grabs him by the neck, but Sarah makes him stop. She then asks him to leave and he surprisingly complies, but assures her that he will return. An injured M21 is then taken to be treated. Later, Regis informs the group of what happened with Rael. The group notes that he is the same age as Regis, but he reveals that Rael is more than twice his age. At night, Sarah sneaks out of the building, but Razel notices and goes out, but Frankenstein begs him to let him handle the situation. With that, he lifts the seal off Frankenstein's true power. When Sarah meets up with Rael, he begins expressing his love all over again. However, Sarah reveals she doesn't want to go with him since she enjoys the time she spends with her human friends, which angers Rael so much so that Frankenstein has to cut in before he can harm Sarah. He reveals he has come to reward him for harming a member of his staff. With that, Frankenstein begins his attack on the pure-blooded noble, who manages to evade the attack using his speed. However, when he comes from behind, he is caught in his tracks. Frankenstein then asks Rael to reveal his true powers since he can use a soul weapon despite not being a clan leader. So Rael summons his soul weapon and sends an attack that injures Frankenstein at the speed of sound. This makes Frankenstein excited, and so he also summons his Dark Sphere. With this, they begin an intense battle that shakes the entire city's foundation. Upon seeing Rael has begun going berserk, Sarah joins in and attacks Rael. A disappointed Rael then reveals the Lord's official summons, which they have no choice but to acknowledge instantly. So Sarah leaves Regis behind and goes with Rael to Lucadonia. When Sarah reports to the Queen, she is asked if Jejudal's report was correct, but she doesn't say. As the Queen then invades her mind to get an answer, Sarah screams in pain, so Rael informs the Queen that he didn't encounter any other noble apart from a strange man called Frankenstein. Meanwhile, Razel along with Frankenstein and Regis are on their way to Lucadonia. As the clan heads discuss the current issue involving Jejudal and Sarah, a messenger enters to report that a jet has crashed into the airspace. After hearing this, they immediately move to investigate. As the group finds their way around the wilderness, Regis suddenly stops them, stating they are about to enter the Forbidden Region. However, they don't listen to him because it turns out the Forbidden Region is Razel's mansion. Once inside, Razel reveals the location of a weapon known as Ragnarok, the Lord's soul weapon. Outside, the knights are tracking their footprints, so Regis decides to make sure they don't interfere with Razel. He then begins attacking them while holding back, but they quickly overwhelm him with their numbers. Help suddenly arrives in time, and it turns out the trio followed them to Lucadonia. At the castle, the Queen, who has found reasonable evidence of Jejudal's betrayal, decides to punish him. So, the other clan leaders beg on his behalf. They state that Jejudal is too trustworthy to be executed, so the Queen recalls that she was also raised by him. However, it is revealed that the real reason for her hate is because her father once chose Razel to be lord instead of her. In the present, Razel's group moves to infiltrate the castle. The guards act as bait and they succeed in drawing out Rael. He then reveals that Jejudal is about to be executed for treason. When he moves to attack, M21 intervenes. He then confronts Rael and can keep up with his speed. When Regis leaves, Tao and Takio promise to provide backup. They make M21 provoke him, so he loses his cool and falls into their trap. This angers him even more, so he summons his soul weapon. En route, Carius confronts Regis, telling him to flee the city until things die down, but he refuses. Carius then promises that if he can get past him, he will assist in helping him find Jejudal. Meanwhile, with his soul weapon, M21 is no match for Rael. Tao and Takio move out of hiding to assist him, and they are beaten mercilessly. When Rael begins going too far, M21 talks down on him to make him angrier. However, Rajek arrives to stop him. At the same time, Frankenstein suddenly reveals himself and quickly puts down Rael. When he reveals he used to battle their former leader, Rajak summons his soul weapon, and so does Frankenstein. With this, they confront each other in earnest. Using his speed, Rajak melts into the surroundings, but still Frankenstein is able to counter his strike. They then continue their battle, which hangs on until Rael attacks the trio. This makes Frankenstein cover for them, so he is hit. To make things fair, Rajak also cuts himself since Rael wasn't supposed to interfere. Elsewhere, Regis is defeated by Carius, who promises to protect and act for him. Back to the fight, Frankenstein is on the offensive. When Rajek is struck, Rael tries to intervene but is stopped. Back at the castle, Jejudal reveals to the other nobles the reason why the Queen hates Razel so much. Although the other clan leaders have their doubts, the Queen decides to execute Jejudal using her Ragnarok. However, she stops when Razel barges into the room. He informs the Queen he doesn't want her executing anyone. As he approaches her, K-Ru blocks his path and charges at him. He begins attacking, but it does not affect Razel. Upon seeing this, Rosaria then takes over from Kay, but her attacks are sent back to her. A boy called Ludis, who specializes in barriers, tries to trap him, but the barrier is shattered. After deciding to band together, Razel uses his mind control to force them onto their knees. The Queen now decides to battle him on her own, so she unleashes her powers as a lord, and everyone in the vicinity feels the aura. When she attacks, Razel simply counters her every move and hurts her good. She gets angrier and attacks again, but Razel reveals she is holding herself back with fear. She then responds to his provocation and summons a blood field. But surprisingly, it is dispersed by Razel, so the Queen gives up in frustration. As she laments, the other clan leaders move to support her. They all attack Razel together, but he fights them all simultaneously and defeats them. He then summons a blood field to end everything, so the Queen has no choice but to protect her subjects by creating her own field, making them cancel out each other. Thereafter, Razel summons Ragnarok, and so both swords resonate with each other, making the late lord appear. He then explains that he ended his life by himself because he wanted to evolve like humans. It is revealed that Jejudal was aware of everything but chose to remain silent, since having a common enemy helped unite the entire clan under a new queen. When Carius brings Regis into the room, everyone begs that the Queen spares them as she makes up with Jejudal. She meets all the requirements, making the swords acknowledge her, so the Lord reveals his farewell message before disappearing. Several days later, the group goes back to Japan and resume their life in school. And this brings the anime to an end. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on another video. Until next time, take care.